Kevin Stefanski's refusal to answer Shedeur Sanders' direct questions during practice said everything. The viral footage captures Sanders challenging the head coach not with anger, but with clarity, asking where he stands and why he continues to be sidelined despite consistent preparation. Stefanski's deflections only added to the growing perception that the team is invested in keeping Sanders invisible. Even teammates reportedly viewed the exchange as overdue, a necessary confrontation against a pattern of suppression.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
What made the moment hit even harder was Sanders' refusal to lose composure, a silent resilience that now defines his role in a fractured system. It's not the shouting that should concern the Browns, it's the quiet restraint. Sanders has absorbed months of diminished visibility, institutional PR control, and media silence, only to keep showing up with dignity. That kind of poise isn't just professional. It's dangerous to a leadership model built on unchecked authority and selective loyalty. It's one thing to be overlooked. It's another thing entirely to be erased on purpose in broad daylight while the cameras are rolling. That's the situation Shedeur Sanders found himself in when footage leaked from a Browns practice session. What started as a routine day behind closed doors quickly spiraled into a public spectacle that exposed the fractures inside the Cleveland organization. And not just the ones you'd expect from a team sitting at 2-7. No, this ran deeper. What unfolded on that field was a clear clash between a young quarterback demanding clarity and a coaching staff invested in keeping him quiet. The footage is short, but the subtext is deafening. You see Shedeur directly challenging head coach Kevin Stefanski on the team's offensive strategy and his own development timeline. He's not lashing out. He's not throwing shade. He's asking the kind of questions players are told to ask if they want to grow in the league. But Stefanski doesn't give him answers. He gives him evasion. The energy isn't, "Let me coach you through this." It's, "How dare you speak up?" And that moment, it didn't happen in isolation. It was a crack in the wall that let everyone see the machinery behind it. Because, according to multiple reports, this wasn't the first sign of friction. Tensions have been building ever since Shedeur gave a confident interview, stating clearly that he felt ready to play. That statement, which should have been a reason to celebrate a young athlete's self-belief, was instead treated as a threat. Not to the team's game plan, but to the hierarchy. From that point on, the organization's posture shifted. PR reps were assigned to monitor Shedeur. His name began to vanish from internal team narratives. Stefanski avoided mentioning him in press conferences. It was a deliberate attempt to sideline him, not just physically, but symbolically. You don't assign handlers to a backup quarterback unless you're worried about what he might say, or worse, what he might prove. The team's actions make one thing brutally clear. This wasn't about performance. This was about politics. It was about preserving the status quo, even if that meant pretending the most vocal, prepared, and clearly frustrated quarterback on your roster didn't exist. And at the center of that preservation effort, Dillon Gabriel. Let's not pretend this isn't connected. Gabriel has been underwhelming all season. Statistically flat. No spark. No momentum. And yet, he continues to start. Why? Well, connections matter. Gabriel and Stefanski reportedly have shared collegiate coaching ties, and even more telling, they share the same agent. That's not just awkward. That's a clear-cut conflict of interest. So while Gabriel continues to underperform with no consequences, Shedeur is boxed out, managed, and silenced, not because he's unready, but because his presence disrupts a system built on familiarity and control. What's wild is that Shedeur hasn't cracked. Despite everything, the silencing, the favoritism, the camera-ready dismissiveness, he's remained composed. Even in that confrontation, he's calm but firm. His questions are about clarity, not ego. He's asking for development, not entitlement. And that restraint, that professionalism, that's what makes all of this even more damning for the Browns. Because here you have a player doing everything right. Showing up, staying focused, staying respectful. And in return, He's treated like a liability. Not for his actions, but for what he represents. A disruption to the system. A player who refuses to shrink himself to fit inside someone else's narrative. And it's not just about Cleveland. This is bigger than one team. It's about how the league, time and time again, struggles with players who carry themselves with boldness and self-assurance, especially young black quarterbacks with high-profile family legacies. There's a coded standard they're expected to meet. Humble, quiet, deferential. The second they show too much confidence, the league gets uncomfortable. Shedeur's confidence? That wasn't arrogance. It was perceived as insubordination. And that perception? It's shaped by everything except his actual football ability. Let's not ignore the pattern. Shedeur was passed over in the draft multiple times, not because of a lack of talent, but because of how the league perceives him. His father's prominence, his media presence, his refusal to wait his turn quietly. All of it combined into a narrative that pushed him down the pecking order. And now that he's on a team, that narrative is being used to justify pushing him into a corner. Meanwhile, that same team is falling apart. Cleveland is 2-7. Their offense is in free fall. And yet, the coaching staff refuses to try something new. They'd rather lose quietly than risk letting Shedeur shine. Because if he does shine, the entire house of cards comes down. The favoritism, the silence, the media censorship. It all becomes indefensible the second he gets on the field and delivers. And let's not pretend the locker room isn't watching this play out. Teammates see who's working, who's showing up early, who's being ignored. And they definitely see who's being protected. That kind of division, it doesn't just stay in practice. It spills into team meetings, film sessions, and game day morale. You can't build cohesion around a lie. And right now, the Browns are trying to build around one. What's even more frustrating is that the organization had a chance. They could have embraced Shedeur's leadership, leaned into his drive, let his energy fuel a new direction. Instead, they chose optics, chose control, chose silence. And that silence? It's not going to hold. Not now. The leaked footage has already kicked the door open. It's forcing questions the Browns aren't ready to answer. Why was he being monitored? Why was his name being scrubbed from internal media? Why has Dylan Gabriel continued to start without producing? Why is a coach so allergic to being questioned? The team can try to deflect. They can downplay. But it's already too late. The world saw what happened. And they felt what it meant. So now it's Shedeur's move. Stay and fight for a team that's built its entire playbook around ignoring him? Or demand a trade and let someone else give him the shot Cleveland wouldn't. Either way, the clock is ticking. Because if the Browns continue on this path, they're not just risking losses on the field. They're risking credibility. Among fans. Among players. Across the league. And in a sport where locker room trust and leadership matter, that loss could be the most devastating of all. Shedeur's future doesn't hinge on whether he's allowed to succeed in Cleveland. It hinges on whether he decides this team is even worth fighting for anymore. And right now, the answer isn't looking good. There's a saying in football, the tape doesn't lie. And right now, the tape is screaming. That practice footage of Shedeur Sanders confronting Kevin Stefanski wasn't some throwaway sideline clip. It was a glimpse into a locker room imbalance that's been festering all season. You could feel it. The frustration in Shedeur's voice, the passive deflection from Stefanski, and the tension that's clearly been simmering behind closed doors. It wasn't a meltdown. It was a boiling point. And the Browns? They got caught trying to bottle the steam. This is what it looks like when an organization builds its identity on maintaining control instead of cultivating talent. Shedeur wasn't lashing out for no reason. He was reacting to months of being professionally gaslit, told to stay patient, told to trust the system, told to develop, while being benched in favor of a starter whose only consistent trait has been underperformance. It's maddening. And worse, it's calculated. Let's be clear. Shedeur has done everything that's been asked of him. And more. He's stayed composed. He's worked behind the scenes. He's avoided media blowups, even when fans were calling out the favoritism long before the cameras caught it. But that patience? That professionalism? It's been met with silence. And not just indifference, intentional silence. You want to know how deep this goes? The team literally deployed PR handlers to monitor him. They told staff not to mention his name in public forums. They adjusted their internal media strategy to erase him from the spotlight after a single confident interview. That wasn't about protecting team chemistry. That was about neutralizing a threat to the internal hierarchy. And Shedeur? He knew. You can see it in the video. He's not arguing for fun. He's confronting the very people who told him to trust the process while they quietly buried his name. And when he finally called it out, Stefanski had nothing, just vague deflections and visible discomfort. You can't develop a player while pretending they don't exist. And that's exactly what the Browns have been doing. They want Shedeur to stay sharp, stay prepared, keep working, but without recognition, without reps, and without a real path forward. That's not development. That's containment. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room, Dillon Gabriel. There's no way to sugarcoat it. Gabriel's been mid at best. The Browns are 2-7. The offense has stalled. There's no spark, no rhythm, no momentum. And yet, he's still starting. Week after week. No rotation. No open competition. Just blind loyalty to a quarterback who isn't delivering. Why? Because of connections. Gabriel and Stefanski share a network. Coaching overlaps. Agent ties. Quiet backdoor loyalty that keeps the starting spot safe regardless of performance. And when you've got that kind of institutional support, merit stops mattering. Suddenly, it's not about who's ready. It's about who's protected. And Shedeur? He's the opposite of protected. He's been out there on his own, carving his space in silence, waiting for the moment when someone finally acknowledges the gap between what he brings and how little he's been given. And the locker room sees it. You think the players haven't noticed how this has been handled? Of course they have. They've seen the late-night film sessions, the way Shedeur holds himself at practice, the way he stays focused even while getting iced out. And they've definitely seen how Stefanski reacts every time his name is brought up. That kind of bias doesn't just affect the quarterback room. It infects the entire team culture. When players see leadership ignoring results in favor of relationships, it breaks trust. And once that trust goes, the locker room fractures. Suddenly guys are playing for themselves, not each other. And the Browns are already slipping into that spiral. What makes all of this so much worse is that it's familiar. How many times have we seen this exact story play out? A young black quarterback with confidence, personality, and talent comes into the league and immediately gets labeled a distraction. Not because of what they do, but because of how they carry themselves. Because they refuse to downplay their own ambition. Because they dare to believe in themselves without permission. And in Shedeur's case, the league's been fighting that battle since before he was drafted. His last name alone puts a target on his back. The NFL hasn't figured out how to handle players with famous parents unless they play quietly, smile politely, and shrink themselves to fit the mold. Shedeur doesn't fit the mold, and that's exactly why he's being punished. He's being penalized not for failure, but for presence, for not deferring, for showing up with expectations. And now that the footage is out, the mask is off. Stefanski can't pretend this is just coaching. The Browns can't act like this is just strategy. And fans aren't buying the development plan narrative anymore. You don't develop someone by silencing them. You don't prepare someone by pretending they don't exist. That's not coaching, that's control. And now the organization is cornered. Because every decision moving forward will be under the microscope. If they keep Shedeur on the bench, they're validating everything the footage exposed. If they start him now, it's going to look like a PR move, damage control, not faith. And worst of all, if they keep pretending this didn't happen, they're just digging the hole deeper. The smartest thing Cleveland could do right now? Own it. Acknowledge the friction. Give Shedeur a shot, not to save face, but because he's earned it. But they won't. Because that would mean admitting that the system they've protected all season has failed. That their loyalty was misplaced. that their silence was strategic. And when teams are more committed to avoiding embarrassment than building a winning culture, this is what happens. The thing is, Shedeur doesn't need saving. He doesn't need a coach to vouch for him or a PR team to reframe the narrative. All he needs is a real opportunity, on the field, under pressure, with a fair shot. But if the Browns aren't going to give him that, then they don't deserve him. At this point, it might be in Shedeur's best interest to walk. Demand a trade. Find a franchise that's not afraid of confidence. One that doesn't rely on shared agents and backdoor alliances to shape its roster decisions. One that recognizes leadership when they see it, not when it's convenient. Because what this incident proved is that Shedeur's not the problem. He's the mirror. And the Browns don't like what they see when they look at it. He's exposed the favoritism, the silencing, the double standards. And now the world is watching. Every decision they make from here on out is going to be framed by this footage. Every rep Gabriel takes, every play call, every post-game comment. It's all going to be dissected through the lens of why is Shedeur still being ignored? And that question's not going away. So what happens next? That depends on how bold Cleveland's willing to be. Are they ready to face the music and do what's right for the team? Or are they going to double down, protect egos, and let another generational talent slip away? Either way, Shedeur's future is coming into focus. And the Browns? They've got a decision to make, and not a lot of time to make it. The craziest part? This could have all been avoided. The Cleveland Browns had the chance to be the team that did things differently. The team that recognized raw talent, embraced a confident young quarterback, and broke out of the stale NFL mold that's kept too many players boxed in by bias and politics. Instead, they chose silence. They chose comfort. And now, that silence is deafening. They watched Shedeur Sanders show up every day, putting in the work, staying locked in despite being deliberately sidelined. They watched the offense crumble week after week under Dillon Gabriel, whose numbers have been as unimpressive as the play calling supporting him. And still, Stefanski doubled down. Still, Shedeur was told to wait, and wait, and wait. What exactly was he waiting for? Because if you're 2-7 with a struggling offense, what are you protecting at that point? Pride? A pre-draft promise? An agent relationship? This isn't strategy, it's stubbornness. And now, it's costing them everything. The truth is, Shedeur's confrontation didn't come out of frustration alone. It came from clarity. He knew what the situation was, knew how the team was moving, knew how carefully they were trying to sideline him while pretending it was for his own good. And that moment on the practice field, that was him finally saying, enough. It's a rare thing in the NFL to see a player demand respect in real time and be completely right. And that's what's made this clip so viral, so loaded, so undeniable. You can't watch it and not see the imbalance. You can't hear the questions Shedeur asked and not realize he's been ready. And the only people pretending otherwise are the ones afraid of what his readiness means for their status. Because this isn't just about who's playing quarterback. This is about the Browns' entire identity. They've built their team on a fragile ecosystem of loyalty and comfort. Stefanski's coaching style, the agent overlap with Gabriel, the PR team's iron grip on internal messaging. It's all one big machine built to keep outside influence out, to control the narrative before the results ever show up. And Shedeur? He broke that cycle, just by asking questions, just by existing with confidence. And the Browns couldn't handle it. Now, they're backed into a corner with no good options left. If they bench Gabriel now after weeks of protecting him, it confirms what everyone already suspects, that they were prioritizing politics over performance. If they keep starting him, they risk alienating their locker room and fans who are tired of watching a team implode while a capable leader is kept in the background. And don't underestimate the locker room here. Football players know the game behind the game. They see who gets chances, who gets held back, who the organization believes in, and who they try to ignore. And when a guy like Shedeur, who's respected, vocal, and hardworking, gets treated like a ghost, that doesn't go unnoticed. This kind of imbalance tears at team chemistry. It builds quiet resentment. And when you're already losing games, that kind of culture collapse is lethal. But here's the twist the Browns weren't ready for. The internet leveled the playing field. This footage going viral changed everything. It stripped away the illusion that the team could manage this story internally. No more hiding behind development. No more passive PR statements. Now the fans know. The league knows. The media knows. And most importantly, Shedeur knows you know. And that changes the pressure entirely. He's no longer a buried asset. He's a national conversation. And with every week he stays benched, the Browns look more out of touch, more manipulative, and more afraid of what would happen if they just let him play. Because if they let him play, and he delivers, it would expose everything. Every deflection, every dodged question, every PR barrier they put up to silence him. It would prove what Shedeur has been saying all along. He's not asking for special treatment. He's asking for a fair shot. And now, he might have to find that shot somewhere else. Let's not kid ourselves. Shedeur has options. There are teams out there begging for a leader, for someone who's hungry, composed, and confident. And if Cleveland continues to cling to its crumbling structure, Shedeur leaving isn't just likely, it's inevitable. And that would be the real loss. Not because the Browns would lose a promising quarterback, but because they'd lose the one player who could have transformed the culture. The one guy who had the strength to speak truth to power and still keep showing up, still lead, still stay ready, despite being ignored. And when he goes to another team and succeeds, and you know he will, that success will hang over Cleveland like a storm cloud. Every touchdown pass, every sideline interview, every playoff win, a constant reminder of what they had and refused to value. This isn't just about a practice blow-up. It's about everything the NFL still needs to fix. The bias, the favoritism, the manufactured humility tests young players, especially black quarterbacks, are expected to pass before they're taken seriously. Shedeur is forcing that conversation now, and the league can't look away. So if you've been watching this unfold and wondering how we keep ending up in the same cycle, there's your answer. It's not a coincidence. It's a system. And Shedeur called it out. Now, all that's left is what happens next. Does Cleveland wake up and course correct? Do they let the guy who's earned it finally lead? Or do they stay committed to the lie just to save face? Either way, Shedeur doesn't lose. Because when you've already exposed the truth, there's nothing left to prove. If you've been following the fallout, drop your take in the comments. Should Shedeur demand a trade? Should the Browns bench Gabriel and finally make the switch? Hit like if you're done watching talent get buried for the sake of politics. And subscribe. We're going to be following every move, every press conference, every shift because this story, it's just heating up.